On the stage. Mr. Elena Bobise, please. Very good. Thank you so much for that. Exactly. And the CEO of, oh, you are here. Yes, very good. Welcome. Excellent. Thank you so much. Welcome. Yes. Okay, fine. Family photo first, and if you can just join. Yeah, come. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. President, and also our distinguished guests. Thank you so much for these members of the Fourth Estate. This is going to be pretty first. Let me first of all say the President of the African Development Bank, who is also the Chairman of the Africa Investment Forum, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, accompanied by the CEO of Africa 50, Elena Bobise, the CEO of Development Bank of Southern Africa, Boitemelo Mosako, and from Africa Finance Corporation, representing the President Samailu Zubairu, we have Elias Jua, the Vice President. We have Zito Alfayo, Head of Project Preparation from Afrexim Bank, representing the President, Professor Benedict Orama. From the Islamic Development Bank, we have got Hamza Bokili, Head of Partnerships at the Islamic Development Bank, representing the President, Dr. Mohammed Suleiman Al-Jazair. And we'll be joined virtually or online by Roger Stewart, representing West and Central Africa, European Development Bank. He will be representing the President, Wana Hawaya. And we are also hoping to be joined by Senior Director of Africa Investment Forum, Chinelo Anahu, shortly. But because of time, and I know you are all carrying the excitement of the past 3 days, 72 hours, worth more than 34 billion US dollars. Where do you get that world in this world? 34 billion US dollars in 72 hours. And the beauty of it all is that the last act of these 72 hours belongs to you, members of the Fourth Estate, to drive home the message from here, the beautiful city of Marrakesh in Morocco. And I know you'll do exactly that. So without further ado, I will hand over to the Chairman of the Africa Investment Forum, the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, to make brief remarks, and after that, we'll open the floor to you, members of the press, to ask questions, make comments, and in some cases, compliments. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Director of Communications, Solomon. In fact, you just listened to my speech, so I'm not going to make any speeches. I just want to give a word of appreciation to you, here in this hall, wherein the media is with us. I really appreciate all of what you do. I appreciate your coming from all across Africa and across the world to be here for the Africa Investment Forum. And of course, how things are written, how they are projected, the news about Africa, it's so important. And I can tell you that we that are the partners for the Africa Investment Forum, we believe that Africa is the investment frontier in the world. And we believe that Africa is the bankable investment destination. We believe that whether it's in, people ask, why are you so optimistic? Why are we optimistic about Africa? Of course, we are optimistic about Africa for many reasons. How many places do you go that you have a population of 1.4 billion people that's going to grow to 2.5 billion people? That'll be 25% of Africa's population by 2050. Which part of the world do you have the largest sources of solar power, 11 terawatts in the world, except in Africa? That you can do literally 350 gigawatts of hydropower, 150 gigawatts of wind power, 15 gigawatts of geothermal power. But in Africa, God loves Africa. We have all that. So Africa is the frontier when it comes to even investment in renewable energy. How many places do you go in the world that you have 54 countries all connected together to have a formidable economic zone that is what, in GDP terms, $3.4 trillion? How many places do you go in the world that you can say accounts for 65% of the uncultivated arable land left to feed 9.5 billion people in the world in 2050, except in Africa? Everybody gets so excited about electric vehicles. Yes, fantastic. The value of that today, we know, is $7 trillion. That's going to rise to $57 trillion by 2050. Well, people may want to drive electric cars, but electric cars can't move without green metals. Africa accounts for 70% of the platinum in the world, 56% of the cobalt in the world, manganese, lithium ion. So what we do with all of that is going to impact the world. And how many places do you go in the world that can boast of a population of young people like we have? 477 million young people between the ages of 15 and 35. How many places in the world can you do that? So that is the Africa that we here get together to promote, to project. It's a different kind of Africa you're seeing today. An Africa that knows its place, an Africa that has very strong financial institutions, an Africa that knows that together there is absolutely no project of any size, by the way, that we, the partners and others that we do our baobab hands around, cannot handle for Africa. We are ready for thrusting Africa forward to take advantage of all the things that I mentioned, because they are potentials, but nobody eats potential. There is no market for potential in the world. We have to unlock that potential. And that's what brings us together every single day and every single year for this Africa Investment Forum. But you, the media, you always come here to help, to listen to us, to ask us questions about what we do and why we think and why we are so excited about Africa. And I'm glad that we are going to be able to talk to you today. For this Africa Investment Forum, we have more than 1,000 delegates from around the world. We got business leaders from around the world. We have people looking at different issues. I'm not going to go into that now so you can ask your questions. But what's important is this. The narrative is changing. The faith and the confidence and the belief in this continent is high. And we, the financial institutions of Africa, believe that we have the financial muscle, we're ready for it, to put Africa forward. Never at the bottom of the value chains, that's the past. Africa will be in and towards the top of the value chains for everything that it produces. And that's why we chose this, that we are unlocking Africa's value chain. Africa is no longer going to be at the bottom of any value chain. Whether it's coffee, whether it's cocoa, whether it's cotton, whether it's green metals, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, whether it's minerals, whatever it is, Africa will not play second fiddle or last fiddle again. And as I've said, and you heard me many times, the door to poverty is the export of commodities. The highway to wealth is value addition to everything that we have. And that's why we put together this Africa Investment Forum for this year. And that's why we've been able to do so much together. So once again, ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you very much for all you do, and thank you for being here. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now it's time for you, members of the media. The microphones are near you. Just raise up your hand. Please do say your name and your organization and pose your question. Make it simple and go straight to the point. So he's going to be the first. And to be very good to do a balance, I want to see, of course, lady journalists as well raising hands, not just men, people on this side, on the other side. We've got this gentleman here in a suit. Please, your name and organization. And okay, we'll start at the back in yellow.
Good evening. My My name is Jeffy Yase. I work for The Guardian, Nigeria. We quite get the figure, $34.8 billion is 72 hours. But, Mr. President, can we have a breakdown of where these investment interests are going to? Maybe if we have 2 or 3 key projects that the investors have shown interest in. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions. Okay, next to you there, Nasu.
My name is Lolade Akimrele. I write for Business Day Nigeria. So $34 billion at this event, that's the highest since 2019 when about $40 billion was committed. I'd like to ask, how confident are you that this investment interest would actually lead to actual investments? Thank you.
And let's take 1 more here. The microphone, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. My name is Amici Obon. I work for the Sun newspaper, Lagos, Nigeria. Like you said, nobody eats potentials. We have seen that over the last 2-3 years, we have had a couple of military coups across West and Central Africa. I don't know how much of because political risk is a big issue in investment. And you know that no investor will want to bring his money in a place that is unstable, that can't guarantee a return on investment. So how much of these issues, political risk, have this interest factored into the $34 billion that we're seeing today? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that, Mr. President, and then we'll go to the next lot of questions.
Yeah, let me ask the Chief Executive Officer of Africa 52 staff. Thank you, President Adesina. Thank you, also my Chairman Adesina. First of all, let me also thank the host country of Morocco for hosting African Investment Forum. I say that because Africa 50 is based here in Morocco, so I have to do a shout out to my host country. But in terms of answers to the questions, I'll take the first question in terms of the breakdown or at least the key projects, some of the key projects that were discussed here. I must say that I participated in a number of boardrooms. I was very excited by some of the projects that I saw in the boardrooms, just to mention a few of them, a couple of projects in Tanzania. I should say that it's only at the African Investment Forum that you could see boardrooms discussing projects where the president of the country is actually sitting in the room, engaging the investors and trying to unlock the issues. So in the case of Tanzania, I was honored to co-chair a boardroom on a railway project, a standard gauge project of $5.9 billion of total project cost. And the project is highly developmental, financially attractive. There was a lot of investors' interest. This project will unlock the mining value chain. There are a lot of mining resources in that part of Tanzania, and essentially that project, that railway project, will unlock those mining resources and also help transform those resources so that we can have value-added products. So this is one project. Another project, just to give you the type of project that were discussed here, another one in Tanzania. Again, Her Excellency President Suluhu Hassan was in the room, engaging investors, unlocking challenges. My chairman stepped in for 30 minutes or so in the same boardroom to also, bring his perspective, also project confidence, address the issues that investors were raising. This was a port project, $600 million total project cost. Again, a lot of investors' interest. So these are concrete projects. These are real projects that are discussed here. And the African Investment Forum is about accelerating implementation. Because when you have the senior decision makers in the room, you can unlock those issues, and the implementation goes faster than otherwise. This is also why the African Investment Forum is such an important platform. A final project that I could mention that was also discussed here, there are many projects, of course, that were discussed. I'm just giving you a flavor, because if I give you the whole list, we'll be here until midnight, and you're probably not going to be happy.
My chairman will stop me before midnight. But another one, just to give you another one, is the transmission PPP project in Kenya. This is the first time that in Africa we will be doing a power transmission public-private partnership. So first of its kind. Again, the Africa Investment Forum is a forum, a platform enabling those kinds of projects to be discussed, to be advanced. And this project, there was actually so much investor interest that it was oversubscribed. And so we had to tell the investors that they may not be able to get a piece of the project. So these are just to give you a flavor of some of the projects that were discussed. I'm sure the senior director for the African Investment Forum has a list of all of the projects, but I wanted to give you a flavor of those projects that were discussed. Mr. Chairman, I don't know, I can... Okay. Okay.
Stay to that. Jimmy may want to say some words about the projects that you guys are looking at, same for AFC and also for AfriExim Islamic Development Bank. So please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity, and I'd also like to commend Ms. Chinelo for really a quintessential conference. One of the things, one of the projects that we looked at really spoke to climate resilient infrastructure. There was a project that we looked at around the greening of buildings, and that talks to creating energy and water efficiency. Another thing that I'd like to touch on is that we didn't only, look at projects of now, but also about projects that create new industries on the continent. The project that we looked at was the manufacturing of green ammonia, and that project will be happening in the Southern Africa region. Mr. President and the media, I'd also like to add that commitments that were made were, going along the infrastructure value chain. Commitments were made to develop projects further. Commitments were made to invest as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. AFC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, it was a very interesting edition, 2023 in Morocco. We attended several boardroom sessions as well, and I have to echo your introduction words by saying that a lot of critical projects and transition initiatives like the Green Revolution or everything that is related to the net zero policies have had their share of projects presented. I can, for example, cite the transmission lines in Kenya, which is interesting because it's the first IPT of its kind in Africa. One project that was very interesting as well, and that is linked to the electric vehicles and green revolution, is the Zambia factory for critical minerals that would be destined to EVs, EV batteries. And another one that was pretty interesting was the Ghana Wind project, a 260 megawatts IPP project. So indeed, we can see that all the important subjects are addressed, and that Africa would not stand in second rank to achieve those goals.
AfriExim.
Thank you, Mr. President. We at AfriExim Bank participated in the Battery Initiative. This is a landmark project that involves the DRC and the governments of Zambia. Essentially, what the project entails is to develop a special economic zones whereby we can support the development of natural resources, that's cobalt and lithium, move them up the value chain so that we can ensure that the regional value chains can be vibrant. In this regard, we are working with our partners, the African Development Bank, AFC, Badea, and UNECA to develop this particular project. We brought this project to the boardrooms and we received significant interest. And one of the good things that came out of this particular boardroom session was the fact that we're coming at the project development stage. So we've got sufficient latitude within which we can structure this transaction to ensure that we can bring it to the market. Maybe just a few, one statistic I'd like to draw out is the fact that when you export raw materials, you're playing in the market space of about an $11 billion project. With this particular project, we're trying to move up so that we can at least bring cathode and anode precursors. That's a $221 billion project, and that's what we're trying to unleash onto the continent. Looking ahead, what we also expect is that once these special economic zones are brought on stream, we should be able to move even further down the value chain and now play in the $7 trillion market. And that's the vision we have, and that's what we want to do with our partners. Thank you.
Islamic Development Bank.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me thank, on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Souleymane Jasser, and say how immensely grateful we are to the Kingdom of Morocco and to His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God assist him, for hosting this edition, very successful edition of the AIF. So as far as IDB is concerned and the group and the boardrooms are concerned, we've had several encounters and very interesting discussions on projects that we've been involved with from the early stages. One I can think of is the gas pipeline projects. So the discussions with ONIM IDB, just as a side note, financed the FEED study for this particular project. And we're very optimistic and excited at the prospects of seeing some fast tracking in this progress, and we would be more than happy to consider additional financing for this. Another one in Morocco that we've looked at favorably also is the Nador Med port. The road portion of the project was also financed by the IDB, and we're looking very favorably at that. But another one to still consider Morocco is the airline financing opportunity that came across, and this is something that we're considering and looking at with our partners from Afrexim Bank. If we go outside Morocco, I mean, there's some very interesting projects that have very good prospects. Thinking in terms of industry and trade, particularly in Egypt with a soda ash project. So this is something that we'll also be considering further. Hydropower is something that we've been very active in, that particular space. So the Mozambique hydro project is something that we would be more than happy to engage further. And last but not least, on the climate finance side, we've had some very interesting bilateral with the Senegalese APIX, Agence pour la Promotion de l'Investissement, for a very interesting proposal actually to solve one of the predicaments they have with the line of the TER going across two forests. So there's a biodiversity component. There's several components to this project. And this is a realization, it's important to mention, that alone we cannot achieve much. But this is a project where we would need very active mobilization of partners across the value chain, from project feasibility, development, all the way to the commercial tranching of this particular project. But we look at it very favorably. One thing I would say also, which is important, is that IDB reaffirmed its commitment to this very important platform where we're finding partners, and IDB also, showed very strong interest and commitment to the agro-industrial special zones, and we've also committed, on top of joining the alliance, an additional $300 million US, and this is something that we believe is set to transform agriculture and industry across Africa, and bridging through rural and urban development. So we're very excited about that. And we would very much like to see fast tracking of deals, but this is up to all of us founding partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The EIB, European Investment Bank, is joining us by...
Yes, thank you. I would like to also recognize and thank the Kingdom of Morocco for the excellent hosting and the sponsorship of His Royal Majesty, as well as the African Development Bank for hosting such a professional and well-attended conference. We're proud to be supporters and sponsors of this event since the beginning. We believe, as the other founding partners, that the role of the private sector is absolutely critical in terms of unlocking the value chains. We weren't quite as active in terms of the boardrooms as some of our other founding members. We did, however, enter a mandate letter with the fond Mohamed VI for a 500 million investment. But in terms of recent transactions where I think we speak to the theme of the value chain, we recently signed an investment in Nigeria with Emzor for 14 million, which was basically, it'll be the first time that in sub-Saharan Africa, active pharmaceutical ingredients are manufactured in sub-Saharan Africa. And as well, we've recently financed vaccine manufacturing in both Ghana and Senegal. So we see that the importance, I think COVID demonstrated very accurately how important it is for the value chain, resiliency of the value chain in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa in particular, but throughout Africa, to unleash the potential of Africa's youth and the creativity and dynamism, as President Adesina was mentioning at the beginning. So we would simply, ascribe once again to the values and indicate that we're proud to be supporting the African Investment Forum and look forward to working together more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The other question we had was about how confident we are in terms of taking these projects to closure. Now, first and foremost, if you look at the Africa Investment Forum, is that you prepare projects, then to try to raise financing around the project, and you accelerate financial close, right? So once we actually have said we're committed to a project, all the due diligence needs to be done until the whole thing reaches financial close. It's a lot of work that needs to be done. But let me just tell, for example, we've, to date, in terms of the financing gap for deals that were brought to the Africa Investment Forum, we've been able to close completely $11 billion of those. That's a lot of money. I'm president of the African Development Bank. I can't think of anything, anywhere in Africa that you get that, on anything. And so we are going to stay with it. For example, if you take the Kampala-Jinja Expressway, $1.5 billion closed. It's done. If you take, for example, another big one was the offshore gas hub for Nigeria, which was $1.4 billion closed. If you look, for example, at the African Infrastructure Investment Fund, which is a multinational fund for $500 million to do investment from private equity side in infrastructure, $500 million are closed. If you look at, even in Nigeria, you're from Nigeria, right? Well, I don't know, I think so, yeah. There is the Infrastructure Credit Guarantee Fund for Nigeria for $200 million that was closed. And then if you look, for example, at even in Nigeria, Geometric Power, which is one that was brought $500 million through AfriExim, the work with AfriExim, that was completely closed, and several others like that. So what we do at the African Investment Forum is that we follow through on all of these things until we are able to reach financial close. I'm confident for various reasons. First is the fact that the projects that the governments commit to are projects that have strong commitment and political support, policy support from the government. So the issue of whether these programs will not go ahead doesn't exist because the heads of state are there inside of the boardrooms discussing those things with us. And secondly, is the fact that to even close a number of these projects, you also need risk guarantee facilities. So we have quite a number of risk guarantee facilities that we can deploy to make sure that we mitigate whatever the, whether it's a project risk, market risk, or any type of financial risk that may be there. So I'm pretty confident that a significant share of this will of course, be closed. On the political risks, you know, if you look today, people always think something happens in one part of Africa, the whole of Africa is in a mess. It's not true. Challenges, geopolitical risk are all over the world. Well, how come people don't talk about whether that's going to impact investment in Europe just because you have, you know, Russia and Ukraine war? Are investments not going on in Europe? You know, and you have all of those things going on. Nobody wants to have war of any kind. But I do want to say that, by and large, yeah, political space in Africa is quite good. Stability of the democratic elected governments, it's there. So I'm pretty confident that the political risks are quite minimal concerning Africa, because if this was something that was going on and the heads of state were not in the boardroom, then you say, oh, wow, you know, you may commit to a project long term and then you find that the political support or policy support is not there. That's not the case, because the heads of state themselves are inside of the boardrooms discussing that. So I do feel that it's something to keep in mind. Okay.
Okay, let's see. I did say we need to see also some more lady journalists raising their hands and asking questions. So we've got one here, and then we'll go to the gentleman in the middle here. If you bring the microphone here just bring them first to the lady here, then I'll come back to you.
My name is Lucy from News Agency of Nigeria. The theme of this year's event is very apt, and based on what you spoke about changing the narrative for Africa, how soon are we expecting to begin to enjoy the dividends of this amount today? And also, energy, from what have been said in this past days, seems to be one of the major challenges to development and connectivity. While some countries are looking towards fossil fuels and hydrocarbons and renewable energies, what are the immediate solutions to this challenge based on the deal signed today?
Okay, thank you. Pass the microphone right to the gentleman here. Just come here, please. The microphone on the same row, if you go to that gentleman in the middle. No, go behind there.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I'll give to the gentleman behind you.
My name is Philip Isakwa, Business AM, Nigeria. The last session today focused on entertainment. And I understand quite, because I followed the president, AFDB, and then Afreximbank, the way they talk about youth. And they have devoted a lot of money. I think Afreximbank has a fund for $1 billion, I think, for entertainment. And AFDB does pursue the interest of youth. I want to ask whether some things were brought to the deal room regarding this particular segment of the economy. And why is it that I didn't hear anybody mention whether there were transactions closed, and what could be the real challenge with funding that sector of the economy, especially because you talk about the youth bulge in Africa.
Yeah, thank you for that. Then the gentleman at the center here. Yes, please, go on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gianfranco Pellegrino, Africa Affari Magazine, Italy. Feed Africa is one of the major pillars of Africa Development Bank strategy. And on the other hand, we have Italy is one of the powerhouse of food production machinery. I wonder which can be the link between this know-how Italian know-how, and African needs for a win-win cooperation. Thank you.
Okay, I've seen only one more other hand. Then I'll take that as others come through. Oh, there are more hands. So we'll take those three, then I'll come back to those other ones. Mr. President.
Well, let me just take the issue of the entertainment and creative industry. That's a very, very important industry that you look at Hollywood today, you look at the pop music that comes out of Africa. It's a big business. And last year, we actually closed on the Ben Gurion Film Academy in Nigeria for $140 million. So that transaction is already closed. So that's one of the things that you will be seeing a lot more of in that. There were quite a lot of businesses that actually came here. I don't have all the details of the small businesses, but there were a number of private equity funds and venture capital funds that came here that were actually financing digital payment systems, artificial intelligence systems, supporting youth enterprises. There's quite a lot of funds that were all here during this particular time. So I think that is getting attention. And just even outside of the forum, for Nigeria, for example, the African Development Bank with the Agence Française de Développement, and I think there's one more partner for the IDICE in Nigeria. Yeah, the Islamic Development Bank, that is right here. We put together $680 million for the IDICE program, Initiative for the Development of Digital and Creative Enterprises in Nigeria. That will help to literally create, about 6 million jobs in Nigeria, but also help to also add about roughly $6.4 billion to the GDP of Nigeria through digital and creative enterprises. So there's quite a lot going on in that particular space, and so you don't always have everything in one session. Here we did quite a lot on looking at agriculture, which is the question that, agriculture, renewable energy, port, deep sea ports, a lot more also on health this time around, but also the green metals in terms of mining to make sure we can do the EV, electric vehicles done. Of course, the transport corridors were all featured significantly during this particular time for the forum. Now, on your question about the renewable energy to Alan and also Dumi and all the others, but I just want to say something about what you were saying about Feed Africa. Yeah, the best opportunity to invest in Africa right now, it's around the special agro-industrial processing zones. And we launched the alliance together with Afreximbank, with UNIDO, and also with Arise Integrated Platform for $3 billion. In fact, we didn't add that to this because it was not in the boardroom. But if you add that to that, that's about $37 billion. So it's a concrete investment, commitment that we made. Now, with the special agro-industrial processing zones, that means you can have a structural transformation of the agricultural sector. You can process and add value to things. You have logistics to take things out of rural areas and reduce the amount of losses that you actually have there. So if you're looking to how we connect the pieces on infrastructure, productivity, competitiveness, it's going to be all around the special agro-industrial processing zones that we have. Alan, and then Dumi and rest of the colleagues on the other questions on renewable energy.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you, President Adesina, Mr. Chairman. So yes, the question on renewable energy and energy in general, it is true. Today, our continent is still facing a huge energy challenge. But we are working to try to address it. If you look at the strategy of the African Development Bank, which has been proposed by President Adesina, the first one, high five of the first one is Power Africa. Energy is a serious matter that collectively we take very seriously. At Africa 50, the organization that I lead under the chairmanship of Dr. Adesina, we also have energy as a very important goal to try to reduce the energy gap. The approach that our leaders, Chairman Adesina, our presidents, are asking us to implement is a balanced energy mix for Africa, which includes renewables, going aggressively about developing renewables, but also not forgetting our natural gas, as some people would say transition energy. My chairman now says it's just energy. It doesn't have to be called transition energy. So renewables, but also gas. And we're going aggressively towards to implement our project to give reliable power to our population and industries. Now, for renewable power, we are redoubling our effort. One of the challenges that we are trying to address is to build up the pipeline of bankable projects in the renewable space that would actually receive investment and get implemented. You have big-scale initiatives such as Desert to Power, led by the African Development Bank that we are all supporting. But you also have the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, which seeks to really substantially increase the resources allocated to project development and project preparation in the energy space in Africa. And the special envoy to President Adesina, Amadou Hott, is here to help us raise the resources for the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa. At COP28, we would announce a number of commitments so that we can accelerate implementation of renewable energy. Again, we acknowledge that today there is a gap. We can tell you that there is a lot of activity to try to speed up the implementation so that we can close up that gap. There cannot be industrialization without energy. There cannot be manufacturing, there cannot be development really without sufficient energy. And we know that. This is why the first high five is Power Africa, and we fully support the chairman's vision, and we are implementing it as quickly as possible.
What I'd like to add is my brother Alain has touched on the generation side. But you see, in this forum, Mr. President, there were projects around transmission. It's all good and well to generate, but it's important that this energy can be wheeled all over the continent. And the projects that we saw in this forum do that. The strengthening of the grid across the continent in the different countries will really enhance energy security and drive growth for the region. And that's what I'd like to say to my dear sister there, that we've touched on generation and we've also touched on transmission, which is a full package to Power Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to speak to the question on creatives. We at Afreximbank for the last 5 years have been fully behind this particular initiative. And this initiative was born out of the fact that for too long, we've been saying there's a lot of potential on the continent. Yes, we do have a huge demographic dividend when you look at the youth in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of creativity. But for too long, they have been playing on the periphery in this particular space. What we needed to do was to come in and take some early stage intervention so that we can formalize some of these value chains and bring them and mainstream them so that we can finance them. When you look at the entertainment sector, fashion, music, and the film industry, what we're seeing is maybe 5 to 10% of the potential. But when you formalize these value chains and bring institutions such as Afreximbank and AFDB with what they're doing, we believe that once you mainstream, we can finance them, you can unlock value, increase the investment promotion, and thereby increase the, first and foremost, the job creation, create livelihoods, and in so doing, facilitate trade. The second item I would like to speak to is with regards to the Feed Africa initiative, which President Adesina has championed very well. We at Afreximbank are fully behind that initiative, and our Impact 2026 strategy, facilitating industrialization and supporting export development initiatives. We also have a special economic zone program. In this particular program, we have a multifaceted intervention. And what we're trying to do is, first and foremost, ensure that we can industrialize the continent. We're looking at food as a business and not just in terms of nourishment. So we're looking at it as a fully fledged business. And what we have in mind is looking at it from an end-to-end intervention. First and foremost, we get the commodity, we aggregate the farmers, the small-scale farmers, add value to them through extension officers, bring them to the industrial parks, whereby we can add value through processing, and then have inbound and outbound logistics through which we can take this product into the market. And to facilitate this, cognizant of the fact that Afreximbank cannot do this alone, and I would like to laud President Adesina for launching the Alliance for Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones, because we believe that by pulling together, we can do so much more. And this was demonstrated on Wednesday when we had the launch of this SAPZ Alliance, where Afreximbank is a founder member, and we committed $1 billion. And what was done was immediately after that meeting, with the team and the energy of the AIF, we had a meeting with President Adesina's team, whereby we've already agreed on action steps that we want to translate so that we can align how we are pursuing our industrialization strategy alongside with the African Development Bank, so that we can have this platform where we can exchange experiences, come together, and jointly assist in ensuring that we can enhance food security and industrialize. So that's what we're doing on our end with regards to Feed Africa. And so far, we've registered significant interest. We're working alongside our partners, Arise, on the equity front. We've got our Fund for Export Development in Africa, which has invested in Arise. On our end, we're also doing debt funding for this particular project. So what you get to see is that it's a fully fledged solution, end-to-end, from project development through to implementation, equity, and risk-bearing instruments. And I'm sure that with this alliance that's coming on stream, we'll do so much more in the shortest time possible. Thank you.
I don't know if EIB want to say anything on any of the questions before we move on.
No, I mean, that's fine. I guess I would just say that, last year we lent $4.2 billion in Africa. We're fully Paris aligned. We have an objective of 50% of all of our deals, and we're achieving that in Africa. I think, the various initiatives, obviously, it's true that trying to find bankable deals is always an issue. But, we're financing transmission lines, we're financing generation across the full value chain. But I think that's all I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before I take the last lot of questions, I just want to report that I did introduce the Senior Director for African Investment Forum, Chinelo Anohu. She has joined us. And I've just been informed, Mr. President, that President Emeritus and CEO of the Trade and Development Bank, Masu Tedese, is traveling, and he tried to connect, but there were problems, and that's why he's not been able to join us. Let me now take the last lot of questions. We've got a hand here, quite a number of hands here. So we will move from, if you can bring the other microphone here, these are 5 hands. We'll take all those questions, and then that will be the end of it. Let's start at the back.
Thank you. My name is Ayanda Holo, all the way from South Africa. I think myself and many others here were privileged to witness your vision, President, since 2018. I always have this question that I've seen the numbers progress through time and through COVID. But I always ask myself, what is it we can do together with the media to enhance communities to participate in enhancing a best environment for these investments to land softly?
Thank you so much. We'll come to the gentleman here in the black shirt. No, voila. Yeah.
Mr. President, my name is Ugochukwu Aliogo. I'm a journalist from This Day, Lagos, Nigeria. From all the conversations that have been going on, I want to find out the investment or financing that is going to the tech ecosystem in Africa, especially taking the case study of Nigeria. In Nigeria, for instance, we have 2 unicorns, Flutterwave and Paystack. And these unicorns are doing tremendously well across Africa and globally. So I want to find out if financing opportunities or partnerships that can help the tech ecosystem in Nigeria and Africa grow and become a leading player in that space. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's come to the middle. Yes, that's it. No, that's you. Yeah, yes, go on.
Thank you so much. My name is Siphelele Dludla. I'm with Business Report in Johannesburg. South Africa, as an economy, contributes about more than 40% of the GDP to the SADC region. And currently the country is undergoing serious economic challenges that have to do with the electricity supply, logistics, bottlenecks. Now, the question I wanted to ask and find out was, are there any deals in this forum that were signed in regards to that, trying to mitigate what's going on in South Africa? Because solving that problem would ultimately solve the challenges around the SADC region. I like the fact that there was a rail deal that was approved between 3 countries in the SADC. But specifically for South Africa, if there are no any deals that were signed in this forum, maybe you can highlight what the bank is currently doing in the country with regards to that. Thank you so much.
Okay, give it to the gentleman in front there. Thank you.
Mr. President, my name is Nadir Djenad. I'm a French journalist coming from Paris, France. Mr. President, you said that the African continent is the place to invest, the place to do business. However, many young Africans immigrate to Europe. How to help these young Africans to believe in economic opportunities in Africa? Or do you think it is first the responsibility of politicians? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, one last question. We've got a gentleman in the white shirt there.
Thank you very much. My name is Victor Oluwali. I am the head and editor of Business Insider Africa. And so my question to you, Mr. President, is during the first panel session of this program, infrastructure development and connectivity were key issues that were discussed as the major barriers for trade and economic growth. And given the recent steps taken by Kenya and Rwanda, to abolish visa for Africans, I would like to ask if there were conversations during this forum discussed around, enabling other African countries to allow Africans to also be able to visit their country without the visa for the purpose of, facilitating connectivity. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. President, quite a variety of questions. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions. Let me come to the question that you raised from France. Je vais essayer de le répondre en français.
In English. I believe that the situation is as follows. The future of young Africans is not in Europe. It's not in Asia. It's not in Latin America. It has to stay in Africa with a high rate of growth, an inclusive rate of growth. It has to stay in Africa, an Africa in which we will invest and set priorities, set ambitions where everything related to young people can be enhanced and leveraged so that young people, many people in Africa, must be an asset for us, for Africa, and not a problem. If you understand that, as to the future of Africa and where its future lies, to iron out the differences and certainly the weaknesses, to overcome those social and economic gaps and weaknesses. That is what we must work on and mitigate. Young people are the future of Africa, as it is frequently said. That is absolutely so. We must believe that. We need to create a space for young people today. We have 407 million young people who are under the age of 25 in Africa. What future are we creating for them today? Question. So we need to decide on doing 3 things, basically. 1, we need to increase, work on education, develop education, human capital, upgrade skills and competencies of young people, very important. Some people opt out of school, drop out. We have a high dropout rate from schools in Africa amongst young people, and they leave school without the skills required to enter and join the labor market. That's important. And that's why we, in the African Development Bank, we have a program to create jobs for young people, to create 25 million jobs for young people between now and 2025, in addition, to increase, to upgrade their skills, the skills of 500 million, 50 million young people in the short term. At the African Development Bank, we have set that priority amongst others, so that young people's affairs must be taken on board wholeheartedly and fully, with commitment. And finally, in the last 5 years, we have earmarked, we have created 15,000 jobs in Africa for young people, 5 million jobs directly, and 15 million, and indirectly. That's the ratio, the breakdown, 5 and 10 million. That is our bank strategy, to create jobs, many, many jobs for young people. That is one of our priorities. Similarly for women. Women today, African women, require a strategy to enable them to join and thrive on the labor market. So today, we need to build up, we need to do capacity building. We need to develop entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship for women, for young people, for Africans. We need to upgrade skills. We need schools. We need a system of education that can train up young people and give them the skills and the competences they need. Vocational training, technical training. Vocational training must be center stage in this strategy, thereby and thereafter. Just before I end, we cannot create jobs. All that goes hand in hand. There's no doubt about that. We must give our young people those opportunities that they deserve. We must look at taxes, our system of taxation as well. We need to change our financial system. We need to revamp our financial system. We need to develop a fit-for-purpose instruments for young people in Africa through our bank, with the support of our bank. We need to create a new system, a new banking system for young people, targeted at young people, that we call Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks for young people. That's what we need to do. This is something that the development banks and investment banks must then play a frontline role in, because they need to provide support to finance debt through equity, private equity, through by creating business opportunities.
Don't say that that issue of what you were saying, that the young people will go to the Mediterranean, is the thing that makes me distressed the most as president of the African Development Bank. Because, before the year I was elected president, I went to Senegal, to the where is that place? Port of no return, the Gorée Island. When I got to Gorée Island, I went in there and I saw this place where they took slaves. And of course, then there's this door of no return that they have over there. So I kind of just thought about it, all the strong, intelligent, dynamic Africans taken from here and taken away as slaves. Then I got into my car. And I got into my car, I started reflecting on it. That was just a week before I resumed officially. And I said, then they were taken against their volition to go there. But today, on their own volition, they are getting into rickety boats and taking the same kind of journey. And I determined that no. Because for me, my principle, my strategy for making decisions is not a very complicated one. I write down the things I hate, I don't like, and I do the opposite. It's simple. No econometric modeling to determine what my priorities are going to be. That's not acceptable, that the young people of Africa are left like that. And so what I'm trying to say to you is that we've reached the decision that we must put our capital at risk behind the young people of Africa. Otherwise, Africa itself will be at greater risk. And I remember when I was pushing for us to have Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank, our board just approved our first bank. We just started it for Liberia for $16 million. We're going to have 7 Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank coming to our board next year in different countries. The demands we have in South Africa, we have in Kenya, we have in Rwanda that want to do that, we have in Senegal, where we started with the DAR. Minister Amadou Hort was running that program when he was Minister of the Economy, and all over the place. So the thing I just want to say is that we need to find the right instruments that support our young people. And let me tell you, Africa's youth don't, they are not begging. They aren't beggars. They are our best assets. We are the ones that should make sure that we are deploying things for them. And that's why when I go around, people tell me, oh, you know, we have a youth empowerment program. We have another youth empowerment program. And I ask the question, how come I don't see young people walking up to me, Mr. President, I've been empowered? It seems to me that those that are proudly doing a youth empowerment program may be empowering themselves, not certainly those young people. And we have to make sure that we do things that are systemic, that are structural, that are scalable for the young people of Africa. When Minister Amadou Hort, Amadou, please stand up, you know, when he was my vice president at the African Development Bank. He went back to become Minister of the Economy of Senegal, and he ran that program on l'appel de DR, no? Yeah. We ran a very good program. I remember telling President Macky Sall, and he was there. I said, Mr. President, when you leave office with all that great work, if another president comes, they will start something else. And that can apply to any other country. No, we cannot continue to put our young people like this. No, we must have institutions, financial institutions, fully dedicated to the young people. Second thing, women. When we had structural adjustment in Africa, for those that are from West Africa in particular, it is the business women, the market women of West Africa that saved our economies. They are very dynamic, but again, they don't have access to property rights. They don't have access to financing. You go to banks as a woman, they ask you to go bring houses. In some cultures, most cultures, they don't even own property. And yet, the tontines, the systems of collective mutualization that we have in Africa works. But it's not in the theoretical finance books in Europe or United States, because that's just African. But in fact, those tontines, those collective groups, they don't default. They've been doing them for hundreds of years. Why is it that we don't use those kind of things to rate and rank collectives of women that can borrow against not houses, but against the security that they will pay you back? If they pay 99.99% of your money back, what other guarantee do you need that women are bankable? And that's why we took the decision at the African Development Bank to create what's called the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, AFAWA. You know, and we say we're going to mobilize $5 billion for women in Africa. And I want to thank, you know, je voudrais remercier très sincèrement le président Macron, votre président.
And I met President Macron in France, and I called up on him. And I said, Mr. President, please try to convince the G7 to provide the guarantees so that we can empower women and free these funds for African women. He heard and he did it. He did it in Biarritz. All the G7 gave $450 million for this guarantee fund. And today we are working with almost maybe 90 financial institutions across Africa to provide guarantees to the women and provide them with the finance they need. This year, we reached $1.2 billion of financing. And at the end of the year, we'll be at $1.5 billion, and we'll continue to progress and progress.
Say we do all these things without paying attention to equitable growth. Women and youth in Africa have to be in everything that we are doing. So just to tell you, that's our priority. Now, I just want to also say something about the issue of the visas. I applaud the government of Kenya, President Ruto, for his decision to say Africans can come into Kenya without visa. That's great leadership, open, inclusive, participative leadership in Africa. Same thing in Rwanda, that also did that. I think Benin also has things that you can come in there. And if you look, all those countries that have open visas are the countries that are seeing significant economic growth, because you have labor mobility going into those countries. You have foreign direct investments increasing in those particular countries. And so we at the African Development Bank have something that we call the Africa Visa Openness Index. We try to rate countries based on, whether you can get the visa before you get there, you can get it on arrival, you don't need it at all. And since we started the index, we found that the number of countries that are doing this, it's improving. So it's something that we need to do more of all across. If you cannot go somewhere, you can't invest there. And why am I more welcome in Europe, in America, than in another African country? I'm an African. So if we say that we have Africa Continental Free Trade Area, if the trade is free but the people are not free, how does that work? I think we should have a borderless Africa, period. People should be able to move confidently all across. Today, I was talking to the Prime Minister of Rwanda, and he explained to me how nervous they were. The ministers, when President Paul Kagame made that announcement. And he said, we were nervous because people started thinking, how is it going to work? There's going to be insecurity. There's going to be insecurity. And then he said, President Kagame said, well, why don't you, the people that are in charge of security, do your job on security, but let the borders be open for them. And he said, after they started, there was no security problems. And so I think that we should have confidence in ourselves as Africans. We should value ourselves as Africans, respect ourselves as Africans. I may be from Nigeria, you may be from South Africa, you may be from Kenya, but we are first Africans. And what we must do is raise that brand. I'm an African. That's the thing. That's most important. I am an African. So let's just make sure that's done all across. Now, on the issue of you were saying about the this day about the question on digital. Where is the person who asked the question? Yeah, about the tech ecosystem. Yeah, this forum, we have different types of deals that come in. If you don't have a particular sector in a particular, it doesn't mean that we are not financing that particular sector. I'm sure they will all come in and say that. For example, if you take a look at Nigeria, I just talk about the IDICE, initiative for the digital and creative industry, $680 million that we are putting into that. And also we have private equity funds that we support, and also venture capital funds that are investing a lot in those companies that you were saying, the fintech industry. The fintech industry is going well in Nigeria. You have the Yabacon there that's doing very well. You have also in Kenya, you have in Egypt, you have in Morocco, you have in South Africa. All those areas are receiving significant financing from us. All I just want to say is this. The fintech industry, again, links to the young people. You know, we have a lot of these big companies now that are unicorns that are coming, but they are young people. So I just want to say it's a priority for us in any way. And I know that we are doing digital payment systems. AfriExim is also supporting digital payment systems, and DBSA and others. And EIB also get into private sector issues on that issue. On the question about the media, I will leave it to you, because you are my director of communication, about how we can get the media in. So let me leave it there. Let me first ask for any part of the question that EIB wants to come in on, and then I'll come to those that are inside the hall. EIB, please.
Well, I would just mention in terms of, President, you were mentioning the increased focus on youth and women, and I would say that certainly in our private sector lending, you know, as people know, we have significant amount of financial firepower, but we are relatively lean, so we work with financial intermediaries. We also work with some of our other founding members. We provide lines to them, so in order to, and also microfinance institutions, private equity funds who ultimately focus on access with SMEs. And I would say that, you know, we are now much more directional, I would say, in terms of the focus on renewable energy, support from renewable energy deals with our intermediated lending, our private sector lending, and also gender and youth. So those are all areas which are extremely important to us. I believe it at that. Thank you.
Do you mean South Africa on the industry?
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'd like to add is the question around fintech and the development of new industries. One of the things that we have done as a development bank for Southern Africa is to create a specific portfolio called High Impact Investment Portfolio. And that portfolio focuses on funding technology commercialization. And that means we are allocating funds to, to manufacturing facilities of new type products. For instance, we are currently in the process of supporting the manufacturing of fuel cells in South Africa, and one of the entities is a woman-owned entity as well. So this just shows that it's not about traditional investments that we have been making, but as development banks, we are realizing that it is important for us to play a critical role in providing financing to the creation of new industries. Thank you.
Alan.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, of course, I was moved by your passionate message about young Africans, really, and also about all of us being Africans. I certainly share your vision on that. Let me just add one quick point on the tech ecosystem. Very important also for Africa 50. We have the data center platforms that we control with data center operations in Kenya, Ghana, now starting in Rwanda, Senegal, Ivory Coast, just to make sure that we also have data here, right here in Africa, as we continue to grow into that space. And finally, I was talking to the Prime Minister of Rwanda, who was here, about our Kigali Innovation City project, which is really a tech innovation ecosystem that Rwanda is developing. I am pleased to announce that we will be starting construction fairly soon. I'd like the government to say to announce the date, so I cannot say, but it's fairly soon. So really ecosystem of young entrepreneurs, innovation, As President Kagame used to say, Africa should not only consume technology, but we can also produce technology, and that's what we've done here already in Africa.
Thank you, Alain. AFC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think initially, our institutions, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, were set up to finance physical infrastructure. So it takes a bit of flexibility to pivot from that to go into digital infrastructures. So I think most of the institutions present today have done this pivot. It takes more or less time. I can tell you on our side that we've been looking at the fintech, e-government services, e-mobility in a very detailed and intense way. We've already invested, for example, in Kenya, in one of the top fintechs. I don't want to give the name. And in Nigeria, we're aiming to close a deal with the third biggest fintech before year end. So it's not Paystack, but it's very close to that. And we're looking at various opportunities across North Africa as well. So we initially built the pipes, then the telco towers, then the data centers, and now we're looking at the tech ecosystem, so fintechs, e-mobility, e-government services in a broader way.
Thank you very much. Islamic Development Bank.
Thank you very much. So I will take up the question on tech. So on tech, let me just first explain the structure of the Islamic Development Bank. I think it's important to highlight that the Islamic Development Bank has a private sector arm called the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD. Tech is of interest to us. We're very active in this space. It's important to understand the instruments and how we deploy finance in the form of debt and equity in this sector. So we do on lending via a network of banks that reach that space, so for fintech. But we also, and this is what I want to focus on, we also consider direct equity. So it's done indirectly through the bank, through the ISDB, but ICD, and this is probably something that is not well known, does direct investments. So some of these unicorns that you're referring to would be more than happy to consider some of the opportunities. We actually have currently in our portfolio, payment system related companies, and this is an area that we're very passionate about, and we believe that this is second to none in terms of interest. So science, technology, information, ICT. To expand beyond that, I think it's important to have an integrated broadband connectivity infrastructure across the continent, because ultimately this will also support these unicorns and encourage entrepreneurial initiatives in that space. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Thank you. I'll speak to the question on South Africa. As you rightly mentioned, South Africa contributes about 40% to the GDP of SADC. And during this particular boardroom session, during the AIF boardroom sessions, Afreximbank and AFC presented what I'll call a landmark project. This project entails the development of the first fully integrated titanium plant across the continent. And this project leverages off South Africa's vast resources of titanium. Prior to this particular project, the country used to export titanium to Europe and Asia. But through this particular project, we're now able to develop a plant whereby we can process the titanium right to the end product, which is white pigment, and export. And happy to report that at this point in time, we fully de-risked this project, and we brought it to the boardroom so that we can arrange $730 million for debt and equity. And happy to report once again that we received significant interest, and we're happy to take this project forward. And these are some of the potential of the AIF that assists us, where we can get a platform where all these investors can come on board, we can pitch this particular project, and then take them to financial close in a timely manner. We expect to do so within the next 12 to 18 months. And of course, with regard to the AFCFTA, which for us as Afreximbank is a key driver, we expect 40% of the output to be sold into the SADC region. Thank you.
Yeah, just to close on the case for South Africa, it's a big challenge that South Africa faces, obviously, with the issue of energy. But we are committed as partners to support South Africa very, very strongly on the issue of energy. For example, on renewable, the African Development Bank, as part of the Just Energy Transition plans that have been done for South Africa, we committed to, we're providing to Eskom in South Africa $400 million to actually invest that more in renewable energy, but also to invest in particular in battery energy storage systems. In fact, the battery energy storage system that we're supporting South Africa for is the first largest that you will find on battery energy storage systems in Africa. And solar is picking up big time in South Africa. So we've been supporting ZIA and several other solar power plants in South Africa. I think that's very important. But also in the Southern Africa region, there is the 2.5 megawatts big solar that we are co-investing in Namibia and in Botswana. Now, we can do all these things with energy, and I think you said it right to me about the issue of transmission lines. But if you don't have utilities that are working well, if you're not pricing energy well to make it profitable for investors to put money into investing in energy, so you're not having cost-reflective tariffs to do that, that's going to be a problem. And if you have technical and losses and non-technical losses that are high because you're not managing your utilities well, again, that's a problem. And so we are all working in a way to make sure we can improve, generally in Africa, just the efficiencies of the power transmission line to reduce the technical losses that you have. And one area that we think a lot of work needs to be done is to continue to improve the regional power pools. Because then if you have excess power, you can sell to the South African power pool or the West African power pool or East African power pool. So we are committed to making sure that this issue of regional power pools are done effectively well. So with that, let me just say the question, because when you actually said it, you said to the president, so I don't want to deflect it to my director. But your point is a very, very good point. And I think that we need to do more to ensure that we bring in, support the African media to make sure that people are aware of where we are making a lot of these investments and the benefits to communities. And let me be clear, one thing that we do very well in this forum, it's not just about saying we have a large project, you want to do it. We pay attention to environmental and social safeguards, to make sure that communities that are going to be affected, right, are aware of the investments and that the safeguards are actually in place, that if people have to be affected persons have to be compensated, we make sure that that's done. That's a classic standard that we do. We cannot make investments that does not benefit communities or that displaces communities. And so communities' voice is very, very important. We try to do that. For the African Development Bank, if we make an investment that has to do with infrastructure, whatever it is, we have to list it and post it for 120 days to make sure that any community or any part that feels that they are aggrieved by it are aware of that. So we try to, within this platform, maintain ourselves very high standards in terms of environmental and social safeguards. But I do hear you on that, and I will give you the responsibility to make sure he doesn't ask me that question again next year, right? Okay, well, but I think we're pretty much done. I want to thank you all very much for being here. Thank you again for all of what you do. Thank you for believing in Africa. And I just like you to know that we from the African Development Bank and all our partners here consider you to be the vuvuzelas for Africa. So blow it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And just to recognize, just in case you came in late, we had Roger Stewart, who is the representative of Western Central Africa region of the European Development Bank, representing President Wanahoya. We have Senior Director Chinelo Anho of the Africa Investment Forum, and we've got here Hamza Bokili, Head of Partnership at the Islamic Development Bank, representing the Chairman, Dr. Mohamed Suleiman Al-Jazam. We've got Zito Alfayo, representing Afrexim Bank, is the Head of Project Preparation, representing President Professor Benedict Orama. We've got Elias Ajua, who is a Vice President, Africa Finance Corporation. We've got the CEO of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, Boitumelo Mosako. We've got the CEO of Africa 50, Alain Ebobise, and of course, the Chairman of the Africa Investment Forum, the President of the African Development Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina. They have been your leaders. They've given you the message, members of the press. I know we are saying we are calling it the day, but your job begins now. Best of luck and thank you.